Welcome back to the channel, lads and ladies, and today we're interviewing the European Canadian of the same named YouTube channel. He is a YouTuber that covers War Thunder and plays some other historical World War II era games, and we're going to be talking about, well, just some ways to get to know him a little bit better as a person. And you won't hear me ask the first question because I was still working with the audio capture, but you can pretty much guess what we were talking about, and then after that, it's pretty much smooth sailing. Let's get right into the interview.
Sure. Well, my earliest memory from school, because I went to a place called Walkington Primary School, and what they wanted to do was to actually bump me up a year. And I remember sitting in an office with the headmaster, my dad, and they were basically arguing about should I be bumped up a year or not, because the headmaster wanted to put me up and my dad wanted to have more of like a natural progression. And to be honest, I completely agree with that. So I remember that. The other thing was one day in class we made paper mache. You know when you blow up a balloon and then cover it in paper mache and make a ball of like paper mache. So that was something we did. I remember smashing my skull open. That that was an interesting experience, because basically we were playing tag and I stumbled and smashed my head on a big brick column, and basically I still have the dent in my head, but I basically cracked my skull open, which was kind of fun. But I only took one day off of school, so I saw it as a victory. But overall, like, my upbringing, when I think of earliest memories, a lot of it is just kind of gone now. Like there's only like little snippets. Like we've basically there are three sets. So I lived in a place called Beverly, and then we moved to the home where my dad lives now. But the Beverly stuff, which is when I was very young, a lot of that is kind of disappeared now from my memory, which is kind of sad. But yeah, those are probably the earliest memories I have. Well, I mean, the way it works in England, kind of, or at least it did around my area, is you'd have a bunch of different primary schools. So, like, I don't know, you may call them elementary schools, and they were designed as feeder schools for larger schools. So you'd have really small schools, and then you would graduate to the upper schools. So every so often we would kind of intermingle with other schools. Like they would come to ours, we would go to theirs, and we used to play games like tag, or throw the sand ball, or something like that. And there was just when it comes to sport, I used to be, before like my body started breaking in certain areas, I was very like competitive even at an early age. So sometimes you just trip and smash your head. Like I don't know, it just kind of happens. But it's well, I remember here, I smashed my head. I got up. I saw everybody looking at me, shocked as all hell. So I knew something was wrong. And I sat in the nurse's office, and I remember just sitting there while the nurse was trying to patch it up, and just a massive blob of blood just fell and hit the floor. Now, I think if this like happened nowadays, I probably would have been like rushed to hospital or something, and everybody would have been going crazy. But I went home, and my dad's a pharmacist, so he was basically like, right, just tape this around your head and you'll be fine. And obviously I was. So yeah, that was probably the first big, like, I don't know, big break I suppose I had when it came to my body just giving up.
So you've talked about growing up in sort of how would you call it, a rough neighborhood?
I wouldn't class it as rough. So the first 10 years of my life, my dad comes from a place called the Lake District in England, and he worked very hard to become a pharmacist. His family was definitely not well off. You would class them as working class in England, and his mother, my grandmother, basically picked up a bunch of extra jobs to put him through university. And so he scraped by for 3 years or 4 years, did pharmacy, started working in pharmacy, making a decent bit of money, met my mum. And then he moved down to a place called Hull. Now, Hull is what is known as the #1 worst place to live in England, and has been for quite a long time. And he met a guy there and decided it was time to set up a business. Like the way he always described it, and I met his business partner, and he's a really nice guy. But the way he describes it is he was basically a dreamer, and my dad was the guy with the pegs, keeping him anchored to the ground. So, the business partner would come up with the ideas, and my dad would create it into a reality. And that's exactly how those two worked. It was amazing to watch. But when I was first born, this was very early on in when they were setting up the business.
Mm-hmm.
So for the first 10 years or so, it was incredibly hard for the family because we didn't have a lot, right? We didn't really have anything when it came to extra stuff. Like you would always see other kids with like new toys at like Christmas and stuff, and we got new stuff, but it was more practical things, which in the long run for me I think was good. But at the time, you're kind of resentful in a way because you're seeing everybody else with these things and you don't have them. But so the first 10 years, yes, it was, I would class as rough. But then after that, when we moved out to the country. I mean, we can go into that in a little bit, but it was rough in different ways. The first 10 years was rough where we were, and the schools that we kind of went to and all of this. But then afterwards, there was other reasons why it was rough, and I would say my teenage years shaped my views on stuff very, very, like, a lot, basically.
Yeah. So, how did it feel? Just to touch on this maybe briefly, I know that I've grown up in sort of a rural area, and whenever people from what we would call the city would move into our area, there's always a little bit of friction. There's a bit of a difference in the culture. Oh, hi baby. Yeah. Are there things you want that you can't have? Go enjoy the things you can't have. Yes, you're very rich. Did you feel some of that friction, or do you remember what it was like to move out into the country and I don't know, become part of your neighborhood? Does that make sense? Sort of feeling your way in, because it'd be a new environment for you.
Yeah, it does make sense. Like whenever you move to a new area, there's always going to be a growing period, and especially when you're quite young. Like I believe at the time when we moved, I was about 11 or 12, maybe a little bit earlier when I was 10. But I realized very quickly that I'd moved from a place that was incredibly populated to a place which only had about 100 people in it. So it was, if you were cast out, it was you were kind of done, because the way that the village worked that my dad lives in now and where I'm from is that you kind of have one of everything. So you have like one doctor, you have like one dentist, you have a few mechanics, you have
one church,
some
right?
builders.
Or maybe two.
Yeah, one church as well, which was a church from the 1200s, I actually think. So the whole thing was, if you were kind of out on the outside, like you didn't get anything because the place was so insular with how it worked. I mean, luckily my dad is like he's an incredibly charismatic guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so he helped us with the bridging of meeting new people, because one of the other thing, like when we lived in Beverly and around there, there was a lot of kids. There was a lot of kids, so I could interact and socialize. When we moved to the country, everyone was adults, right? Like there really wasn't a lot of kids.
Mm-hmm.
So socializing with kids was done at school, and that was it. Like because I lived about maybe 45 minutes or an hour away from school, there was no, let's go to my house for a little bit or anything like that. It was yeah. So in a way, from a kid point of view, I would say yes, I was isolated. But from a community point of view, and also learning how adults interact and how, if some people have a disagreement, you're kind of forced to, what would be the word? You're kind of forced to resolve it when you're in such an insular community like that.
Makes sense.
So I learned a lot from that when I was very small, but I never felt like I wasn't welcome. Like I didn't kind of feel right there because there was no other young people apart from like me and my two sisters. So.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And one of the things about being a kid that I forget a lot, and I have to be reminded of, oh yeah, kids are like this, is that you don't have all this knowledge of like how relationships work and how people work, and you're kind of looking for cues about how to behave in a given situation, you haven't learned all those things yet. So moving on, let's talk uni, right? So you went to university and you worked very hard to get a degree that's not really easy to get. So tell us something about that.
All right, so when I was 16, I went on a rugby trip to Canada, and this was to represent my school in like some national championships. We did really well; we hammered everyone. But we went to Calgary, we went around Edmonton, we basically went around Alberta, and I really enjoyed Alberta. So from then, when I came back, I was talking about all the stuff. We went to Stampede, all of this stuff. My dad was like, "Well, why don't we have a look at not staying in England?" Because at the time when I was 16, there was a lot of personal stuff going on. 16 and 17 was when it kind of hit ahead. So I don't really mind talking about this because I've talked to a few members of Discord about it, like openly. But my mother was a raging alcoholic.
That's
like,
tough.
At one point we had because we used to recycle the bottles, and she had got through 300 wine bottles in a month.
Wow.
So we're talking 10 bottles a day.
Oof.
Yeah. And to the point where, for me, she was not the person I knew, and to my sister, she wasn't either. So there was definitely a force from there, which, kind of, I would say, pushed me away from home, but I wouldn't say it was the driving force. The main driving force, the reason why I went to uni in Canada, was I realized that my area in England is dying. There isn't, for what I want to do, or what I wanted to do, I should say, which was engineering and science. The jobs that were there, there were too many applicants, and there was no way of getting experience. So pretty much it was either move country, move from part of the country, or pick or take a position which it would be lower than what I was qualified for in my head, and that is never something I will ever do.
Okay, so colonization instinct intensifies, is what you're saying.
Exactly. So with a mixture of getting pretty good grades at GCSE and A level, I think I ended up with I think it was 3 A's and 2 B's at A level in chemistry, physics, further maths, and English literature. I moved. I went to the University of Calgary, and I started off in the engineering program. I was doing civil engineering, but the first year there is more like a general engineering, and then you specialize. After the first year, like I'd done well in the classes, but I was so bored. Like I was incredibly bored with what was going on because it was just equations, and equations to me, like I understand why they exist. I understand, the whole methods behind them, but they're just not that fun when it comes to just crunching numbers. Like I'm never going to be the guy where you sit a calculator in front of me and then we just crunch stuff all day to make sure that a system works. Like I'm never going to do that.
Yeah.
So started second year and had a chat with friends, family, and decided to drop out of the engineering program and go into the sciences. And I was going to specialize in chemistry. Now, at the time also, I was the way it works in Canada is that you have these things called options, and you have to take these options in order to have a full degree. So the idea is, so you get like an overall education. So you have your main thrust, which is the in my case at that point was chemistry. And then you do a bunch of options, and these options would be humanity stuff, so like geography or history or English or whatever. And the idea was to give somebody a full idea of what the world was like. Obviously, it doesn't work like that because people just pick the easiest stuff.
Yeah, but, around here they call that a liberal education.
Yeah, but I use that to my advantage, and what I did was all of the optional courses I did were physics, and all the other optional courses I did were either architecture or French. And so at the end of it, after the 4 years that I spent there, I had 2 degrees. I had a degree in analytical chemistry and a degree in theoretical physics. And I probably could do a few more, maybe a semester or 2 and get a minor in something like French or something like that, but I'm just not interested. But the key thing to my university career was it taught me how to work. Like one of the big problems I had with school was I didn't really go off the rails in the last few years of school, but I started to understand that nobody cared. Like I had a bunch of teachers who didn't care. I had a bunch of mates who didn't care. And the whole system to me just seemed completely useless, like what it was supposed to do. But when I got to university, I realized that it doesn't matter if nobody else cares. What matters is that if I care, because what is happening is affecting me. So for me, I don't really thank university for the degrees. I kind of thank it for the mindset of, if you do well, you can bring people up with you.
So it was really up to you, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
You couldn't lean on your teachers to motivate you or to give you inspiration. You had to step up and be your own man.
I mean, think of it this way, right? When I was 17, like the last months when I was 17 going to 18, I moved to a foreign country where previously I'd only been for 2 weeks. I have no family over here. I had no friends over here. The only thing I had was a university offer, and I came over here, got the visa sorted, got everything sorted, and that first year, it was a little bit manic, I'll give it that, but it did teach me a hell of a lot about, hey, look, if something needs to be done, you can't rely on anybody. You got to do it. You go ahead and you do it. And I do thank the university for doing that, even though it didn't really teach me that.
Okay, that makes sense. Sorry if I seem a bit distracted. I'm kind of performing my day job here. Which brings me, so that really, what I'm reading in between the lines here with your sharing about university and moving to Canada is this was sort of like your really coming of age experience. You personally becoming a man and taking on the responsibilities of steering your own life. So to take it to the next place, what do we have left? Marriage and babies. So let's talk about your wife.
Well, before we do,
Okay.
the coming my own man thing, right? So the first step to that was my first year of uni, but I think my third year of uni, the second to last year, was the big one. So I after the third year of uni, I was conked. Like I was gone. Like I was doing more workload than the majority of people, all of my friends there. I didn't really go out that much.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the problems with relying on only yourself in a foreign country is if something goes wrong, then you know it's up to you. And in that third year, we had a very cold winter, and
No.
you know, in Calgary we have like it was minus 40 degrees the whole winter,
Yeah. Bye bye.
and I didn't have a car, I didn't have transport, I just had to walk about, and I just had, buses and trains and all that. But on top of this, I had absolutely no money. Like it got to a point where, because I was working a lot at the university when it came to my studies, I just didn't have time to work. So there was like a 2 month period where it was literally, like butter and rice, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes maybe spices and stuff, and maybe an onion, and that was it. And that I will never forget that, because to me that was as what a lot of people would say, hitting rock bottom.
Mm-hmm.
That is a feeling I never want anyone to ever have, and I will make sure, in my head, that will never happen to another human being. That was when I made that rule. And on top of that, after my exams were finished in when would it be, April, we had like a 2 month period off. So my dad knew my head was screwed. Like I was, I was in a very dark place, but not like suicidal or anything like that. But I was incredibly pessimistic, and I was incredibly, I don't think this is worth it, kind of thing.
Yeah,
And
you were worn down.
yeah, I was pretty much done mentally, which is something I'd never fully experienced before. And I went back to England for a few weeks, and the whole few weeks it was basically just a big pep talk from my dad, basically being like, "Look, you've got a year, get it done.
Mm-hmm.
Get it done. Then you can start climbing the ladder. Then when you're halfway up the ladder, you give somebody else a ladder. You bring them up too." And it was all this, very much, look, if you do well, think about the amount of people you can help. Think about the people you can bring up. That's what you should be focusing on. And
Mm-hmm.
because of that, I think that was the right. Let's go out. Let's do it. Let's go help. Even if it all falls apart at some point, at least let's give it a go. Let's not give up. So that for me was the I am now a man. I am going to do this. If that makes sense.
It makes complete sense, and I think it's really awesome that your dad has been able to be there in those moments for you, uh, to bring you forward, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, my father was, because of the timing of everything. My father would work when I was younger. He would work from 7 in the morning till 11 at night,
Mm-hmm.
and that was 7 days a week. So I wouldn't ever see him, to be quite honest. Like I would sometimes see him at night and sometimes in the morning before school. But the since I went to university, he he's now retired. Like he basically sold up and went, I'm good for now.
Yeah.
Like, I've done my work, because he worked hard for like what, 30 straight years, and now he's reaping the benefits. He can do whatever he wants.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is well, now what he wants to do is he wants to kind of reconnect a lot. So he wants to come and travel over here. He wants us to come back, and yeah, it's I'm now getting the experience I feel like I needed when I was a lot younger.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm very happy that it is happening now.
All right. So let's move on to. Or, sorry, I shouldn't say that. Um, next up, you've talked some about your wife, and we've seen a few times she's jumped into the background of your videos when you're talking about one thing or another and slugged you in the shoulder or something. And so, tell me about how you met and whatever you feel like sharing about this woman who's such a big part of your life. Yeah, baby, you were just tearing into that stuff. So how did you meet?
So at university, I lived mainly in a basement suite, which was rented from a guy who was very, very relaxed. So it was very, very cheap, which was lovely.
You had a cave.
Yeah, basically. But yeah, I used to basically the way that the house was set up is you had the main floor, and then you had two basement suites next to each other on the bottom, and then you had like a washer and dryer in the middle. Mm-hmm. And one day, which I believe was probably first year of university, I get up. I'd been hammered the night before, like just drunk. So I'd woken up and it was not, I was pretty hungover. And I go upstairs for a cigarette and I hear just a lot of banging. And I'm thinking, what the hell is going on? And then, because I'd never talked to the people next door at all. And it turned out they'd left and this little woman had moved in. and this woman is now my future wife. Well, now my wife, I should say, Kit. And she moved in. She'd been working at stuff like jewelry stores and things like that around the time, and she just moved in because it was once again cheap. She wanted to get some money together and all of this. And for a good solid few months, we didn't really even talk. I mean, she's a very shy person when it comes to publicly, and so we just never chatted. And God, here's a story. So there was a guy who lived upstairs at the time called Sam. Now Sam was an ex-convict, and Sam was a lovely guy, but he had a penchant for certain drugs, which was never good. But he was another one of these people who when he wasn't on the gear, he was a lovely lad. Mm-hmm. But the problem was when he was on the gear. Oh yeah. Yeah, and one day he knocks on my door and says, "Hey, do you want to have some breakfast?" And I go, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And he makes breakfast, and Kit's just sat there at the table. And I'm like, "Oh, fair enough, let's have a chat." So we talk for like an hour, and then, we start setting up stuff like, watching movies together, making dinner. Because I walked into her place, and because she was like, "Hey, I want to make you food." And I was like, "Okay, I'll walk in." I looked at her place. There was no proper bed. She didn't have like a settee or like a chair or anything, and she had hardly any food in the cupboards. I'm like, "What's going on here? Like why didn't you tell me? I can help you out with this." And because at this point, I was working for a private company, which I'm not going to talk about, but I was working for a company. I was making money.
So you were one of the Avengers. Carry on.
Yeah. But I was like, where's all your food, basically? And she was like, "Oh, I don't have any. I hardly, the job she had, didn't make her a lot of money, and she was just getting by, kind of like I was when I didn't have that job, when I had to focus on schooling." Yeah. So we kind of pooled our resources together, became a couple, and decided, right, it's time to pool together. Two heads are better than one. Let's get everything sorted. And I graduated. She got better jobs. And then about 2 months after I graduated, we got married and moved out to Vancouver, which is where I am right now. So yeah, that's an interesting story. The first time I met her, which was outside when I'd heard the banging, because she was bringing stuff in, she actually shook my hand and everything. And oh my goodness. She thought I was gay.
Sorry. That's a lot of gay. Okay.
Yeah, she thought I was one of those big gay bears.
Oh
and I was
boy.
like, no. That's not the... I
Ladies,
think maybe just women in general might just find if they see a guy being friendly, maybe they think they're gay. I don't know.
that makes sense. It can almost be like a defense. Carry on with your story. So, you got married.
We got married after I graduated. We moved out to Vancouver because her family's from here, and I had a really good job offer from here, and I don't have that job now, but I have a better job, which I'm even more happy with. I'm not going to go into where I work and stuff just because I'm not really allowed to.
Agent of Shield. Carry on.
Yeah. So I mean we're in a point where we've got a cat. It's called Bernard. We have a house. We're looking to expand property wise. We're looking at all that stuff. And,
babies.
Well, that's the next step in it. Like that's the now that everything is finally going all right. I mean, the only thing I need to sort out is my sleep stuff. But now that everything is pretty much sorted, now everybody's turned around like me granddad and me dad, all her family. It's like right. So
they've been waiting for this for a long time. They just haven't been pestering you about it.
Yeah, so that I'm sure that's the next phase, but that phase isn't here yet. We're still building. I want to be in a position where we're completely financially stable before anything like that happens.
Yeah, okay. Some people do that, but I think it's awesome that you have the background of having gotten great support from your own dad.
Yes, I agree.
That man-to-man passing of the torch really, really is going to help you be a good dad. In my humble opinion. Hi, Guppy. Hi.
Yeah, I do one day want to interview my dad because I think a lot of people will be. I mean, I'm very much like my dad, but my dad's a lot more spiritual than I am when it comes to certain things. So nowadays he's a lot more holistic and all of this stuff. But
I want to interview your dad. You gotta hook us up.
Oh yeah. I mean when he, I think when go back to England next year for a bit, or he comes over here, I think it might be worth just having a sit down and just chatting with him about stuff and how he sees the world, because he's insane, but he's right at the same time, and it's really weird.
Hey, I can relate to that. I've mentioned that I'm a crazy person, but I've seen some stuff.
One of the big things as well that I am very thankful for is it seems like after reading a bunch of news and data sets and all of this, it seems like a lot of people nowadays are struggling for either father figures or just fathers in general. So I'm incredibly proud to say that my dad is my dad, because he stood by me when it seems like a lot of dads just don't.
You're absolutely right.
That's very sad to see.
There's a proverb that says that, and this is talking about moms, but I think it applies to dads just as well. It says that a foolish woman tears down her house with her own hands, and I think we can both relate to that without sharing too much specifics. But to see a dad step in and hold up, his part of the tent, it's really something to be proud of. So, yeah, I can relate to that. Anyway, we talked something about the future. We covered some things of your past. Was there some other thing that came up that maybe you thought of a story or something you'd want to share but didn't get a chance to so far?
Apart from all the depressing crap, probably not.
That's the good stuff. Really, sharing that stuff and knowing where you are now is really helpful for people that are going through the same thing.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, There's a phrase that I use a lot, and there's been a lot of parts of my life, whether I look at family members like such as my mother, or such as others who have had
There you go.
problems in the past, is that it isn't always like if you are in adversity or if you are in an incredibly negative zone, it is very important to have a mindset of, I don't want this to ever happen again. So even though it isn't a constructive learning environment, you are still learning something from it. Like I remember how my mother acted, the backbitingness, the aggression, and I saw it with my dad as well with certain areas. So for me, from seeing those very negative experiences, I know exactly not what to do. if that makes sense. So
I can relate to that entirely.
Yeah, I do think that a lot of people have very negative upbringings, especially nowadays, which is incredibly sad to see.
Yeah.
But it is a situation where if you do have a really negative upbringing, then it's okay. Just understand. Number one, school doesn't last forever. If you're bullied, or if there's people who are twats to you, they have to leave you alone after a while. They can't follow you all the way through your life. You can leave. The next one is same with family. If you have an incredibly disruptional family, then you can leave. I mean, goddamn, I went across half the world, right? You can do it too, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And with the other stuff is even if generally everything that you deal with is negative, just understand that it will change. And I know from when I was like 13, 14, 15, I felt very much that it was never going to change, that my life was going to be extremely negative because of the forces around me.
Yeah. But
when you get older, you do realize that you start becoming independent, and you can start changing these things by, instead of, a lot of the time it's not even about confronting them. A lot of the time it's just about walking away and just kind of forcing your own path. Like there's one thing my dad says a lot, and for years he has been like the pillar of the family. And the pillar gets chipped down over time.
Yeah.
But the pillar still has to stand. And for me, I am now taking up that mantle as the pillar for my part of the family.
Yeah.
And I think, even though it can be very hard sometimes for a lot of people, it still has to. You still have to do it. Even if you don't want to, you still can do it, and you still must do it.
Yeah.
To make sure everything is okay.
Those are the words of a true father. You're ready for kids.
Yeah.
So I won't badger you about it. I'll just imply that I feel like badgering you about it. Make babies. But yeah, you can really, honestly, as a dad myself, with the 1.5 years of experience that I have here, I can tell you that you've got the most important thing down. And it's not finances, it's being a real father. So you're going to bless your kids. And when you guys are ready, it's going to be a great thing.
Yeah.
But you just got to promise to be super proud of them and post pictures of them all over the place. I'm really looking forward to that. So this has been a great talk. I really appreciate the time that you've shared with me here. I'm going to have to get back to my day job because I owe this baby a whole lot of interaction. I got to steer that development. And, well, I look forward to making something out of this. I definitely have a lot to work with, and it's nice to have all these are, a lot of these things are familiar things that we've heard from you being very candid and open during your videos on your channel. By the way, we're talking to a YouTuber here. Let's see. I should talk about your channel real quick before we go. So this is the European Canadian, and he is a War Thunder YouTuber. If I can scroll all the way down to the T's here, he puts up videos, more than one video per day on average. This guy is just an absolute workhorse, and he still finds time for things like being an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. and spending some time with his wife. Oh, by the way, one thing that I was gonna ask you about is, as a YouTuber now, it's a pretty big part of your life. You know, you put a lot of time into this, and it's your free time. So that's like, you know, that's a big chunk of your life now. Yeah. You've talked before about how, you know, the way your channel's going right now, it's a pretty big deal in the War Thunder community, I think. And you've said, you know, this isn't gonna always be this big of a deal when you're talking about your channel. How do I put this?
What's the next step?
How do you... Well, let's put it this way. How do you balance YouTube / War Thunder and the rest of your life? And how do you see that changing in the future?
Well, right now, because of the way that my job works, a lot of the work I do is at home. So that is basically the reason why I can, you know, keep up to date with a lot of stuff when it comes to War Thunder. When it comes to my wife, you know, my wife works 5 days a week, so the time that we spend together is generally in the evenings, and you know that's just how we've always done it. So that right now is, you know, completely fine. The issue I have run into since I was 18 is I don't sleep. And at some point, this is going to catch up to me. So during university, in my second and third year, during school times, I only slept every other day. And this was incredibly detrimental on my mental health, I would say. But I was able to push through it and just get my body to get used to it. Now, nowadays, I'm sleeping about 3 hours a day, which is not good from a medical point of view. So something has to give, and I think I suppose the least important part right now for me is the YouTube stuff, right? So I either have to become more efficient when it comes to YouTube stuff, or I have to relax it in the coming year. Because also, with one of the things I'm going to be doing a lot next year, which is to do with my job, is traveling. I already have conferences I have to go to in America. I already have stuff I have to do in Britain and New Zealand and South Africa. So next year, I'm going to be all over the place. So I've no idea, unless the content changes, which I can easily do. There is no way I can keep up what I'm doing right now. Like it is literally physically impossible unless the professionalism goes down a little bit.
Yeah.
But the way I want to do it is I would love from War Thunder to branch into making history videos. And the main thing I want to do, and have for a long time, is sit down with just old people. They don't have to be veterans, you know, they don't have to be military people, and just be old people. And I can sit there, put a mic in front of them, stick up a camera if they want one, and then just sit there and have a chat. And, you know, you give a copy to their... Because one of the big things for me, right, my grandmother right now, she was what my dad is to me for my dad. Yeah. So she was the pillar. Now, my grandma right now has quite severe dementia, right? So she knows what's going on. Like she understands stuff, but it's like the way I describe it and the way I see dementia is your brain is going on overload. So there's too many actions going at once, so you don't know what to focus on, so you get confused. Yeah. And that is what's happening with her right now. And I would have loved, if I could have sat down like 10 years ago with a mic, I would have loved just to sit there and talk to her for hours about how she saw the world, because she was a fascinating person. But I can't do it nowadays, and I feel very bad because of that. But I feel like, and my great grandparents as well. So I feel like a lot of people would, even just from a personal point of view, because the monetary side of YouTube for me is non-existent, really. Like, if it would be much better for me to spend my time doing something else.
Oh yeah.
So yeah. So when I think about what the plan is, or what the goal is, this is what I want the goal to be: to try and promote people's history for themselves. So if I can record an old, let's say a grandmother, then I can give the recording to the kids, and then they can, they have a long lasting memory of their grandmother, and something that I personally, all I have is memories. Like, if I have kids, I cannot show them their great grandma.
Yeah,
like I just can't do that because unfortunately she'll be passed away.
And YouTube really offers a free of charge platform to archive those for now.
Yes.
Who knows what's coming? But that's, yeah, I can really relate to that. And not to cut you off, but yes, actually, I'm cutting you off. So, I would love to just talk about stuff with you for ages, but I gotta do things, and seems like a good place.
We can always do stuff in the future as well.
Yeah. Here's how I'm going to wrap this one up. To close this off, I've told people before that you were actually a huge part of me becoming a person who makes YouTube videos. And I honestly feel like I've gotten to the place as a YouTuber that I wanted to get to when I started making videos. And it's not a grand goal. And yet here I am. And you know what's next is I want to share people's stories. And you're the first one. So I kind of feel I'm happy that I was able to make this video be the first one that I have an interview with. So I can be, just a notch less awkward each time afterward. So thanks for your time. Thanks for sharing so openly about your own story, and it's definitely helpful to the kind of people that are going to watch this video. There's a lot of people who are, oh goodness, Guppy, we'll deal with that in just a second. She just spilled the crayons everywhere. You're very proud of yourself. So yeah, thanks for your time. I'll catch you later, man.
Thank you for making videos yourself to share. Keep
My pleasure. Bye-bye. Say bye-bye, Guppy. Bye. That was an interview with the European Canadian. There will be a link to his YouTube channel in the description of this video, and there will also be a link to my Discord, which is the best place to get in touch with me. There's also a few very helpful people on there. Also, check out the European Canadians Discord. That's actually a place that I go constantly to find a group of very colorful individuals and people that are useful to play the game of War Thunder with. So with that, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.